Las Vegas is empty, and it's not by accident. For decades, the Strip was built on magic cheap buffets, free parking, free drinks, and the feeling that anyone, no matter how much money they carried, could live like a king for a weekend. But behind closed doors, something changed. Wall Street walked in, the old rules were thrown out, and executives signed off on decisions that would forever alter the soul of the city. In this video, you'll hear the confession of a retired casino executive who was in the room when those choices were made. He admits it wasn't a mistake, it was by design. From the birth of resort fees to the death of the legendary $9.99 buffet, every move was calculated, every tradition sacrificed for revenue. And while Vegas still glitters on the surface, its heart has been hollowed out. Was this the inevitable future of America's playground? Or was it a betrayal of the very people who built it? Stay with us, because the truth about Las Vegas is darker than anyone wants to admit. Step back in time and picture the Las Vegas Strip decades ago, long before resort fees, parking charges, and overpriced cocktails became the norm. Back then, Vegas was a city designed to make you feel like royalty the moment you arrived. It didn't matter if you had a few $100s in your pocket or thousands. The very DNA of the Strip was about transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. The lights were brighter, the smiles at the tables were warmer, and the casinos gave more than they took. At least that's how it felt. Guests could walk into a casino with just $200, and by the end of the night, they'd walk out feeling like Sinatra himself. That was no accident. Executives of the old guard understood something the new Wall Street managers never cared about. If you made people feel special, they would spend like they were special. The strategy was simple, but brilliant. Offer a cheap steak dinner, pour free drinks all night, comp a room even if it meant losing a little money up front. It wasn't about nickel and diming the guest. It was about creating an atmosphere where the visitor felt like the most important person in the building. The classic Vegas buffet became legendary for that reason. For under $10, you could pile your plate high with prime rib crab legs and desserts that seemed endless. Everyone knew the casino was taking a small hit on food, but that loss was nothing compared to the money customers would drop at the tables in the slots or at the bar once they were satisfied, full, and happy. For families and budget travelers, this formula was irresistible. Vegas wasn't just for the rich or the reckless gambler. It was a playground where the middle class could escape reality for a weekend. You didn't need to be a high roller to be treated with respect. That sense of inclusion was what made the Strip magical. The city was alive with movement crowds of tourists filling sidewalks, laughing in long buffet lines, clinking glasses in smoky lounges. Every dollar spent came back with interest because the energy of the crowd fueled itself. One group's excitement bled into another's, and soon the entire Strip pulsed with a kind of electricity that no corporate spreadsheet could measure. People told stories about Vegas as if it were another world. A construction worker from Ohio, a nurse from Texas, or a young couple from California could all arrive on a Friday night, and by Saturday morning, they were living like stars. The secret was generosity. Casinos gave a little free parking, free shows, cheap food, and in return, guests gave a lot more. It was a cycle of value and trust, and for decades it worked flawlessly. This was the Vegas that built legends, the Vegas that created loyalty so deep that families returned year after year. Fathers brought sons, groups of friends turned weekend trips into lifelong traditions, and tourists from around the globe came to experience something they couldn't find anywhere else. The city wasn't just selling games of chance, it was selling a feeling that you mattered, that you belonged, that, for one dazzling weekend, you were the center of the universe. But as the years went on, that model of generosity came under fire. To some, it looked outdated, even foolish. Why lose money on a steak dinner when you could charge triple the price? Why give away parking when you could turn it into a revenue stream? Those questions didn't come from the Vegas old guard. They came from the outsiders, the financiers, the consultants, the men with charts and projections who didn't care about atmosphere, only numbers. And slowly, the foundations of old Vegas began to crack. The cracks widened when Wall Street finally set its eyes on the desert. Hedge funds, private equity firms, and corporate boards began taking control of the casinos that once ran on instinct, tradition, and gut feeling. The old Vegas executives who believed in cheap buffets and free parking suddenly found themselves surrounded by men in suits carrying charts, spreadsheets, and projections. The language of Vegas shifted from fun and experience to revenue per square foot, profit margins per customer, and quarterly growth. For the first time, the Strip was no longer just a city built on dreams, it was a business asset to be squeezed dry. It started with a simple pitch: resort fees. A consultant walked into a boardroom with a presentation that promised millions in additional revenue. The idea seemed absurd at first. Charge guests an extra $25 a night for services that used to be free. Many executives scoffed, predicting backlash, even a revolt. But the corporate side insisted on testing it. And when guests paid without much resistance, the floodgates opened. One property adopted it, then another, and within a short time, every casino on the Strip was charging resort fees. What was once unthinkable became the new normal. The same logic soon spread to parking. Free parking had been sacred in Las Vegas for decades, a tradition as old as the neon lights themselves. Old-timers warned it would be suicide to take that away, that the city was built on convenience, generosity, and openness. But Wall Street logic was cold. A PowerPoint slide projected tens of millions in added annual revenue if drivers were charged. The test began, and once again, guests grumbled, but paid. By the next year, the entire Strip had followed. The numbers looked good, but the soul of Vegas dimmed just a little more. Food and drinks were next. The iconic $9.99 buffet, once the pride of Vegas, became a target. Corporate reasoning was clear: why lose money on food when you can turn it into a profit center? Prices doubled, then tripled. Drinks that once came free with your gambling session now cost $20, then $30. Every item that had once been a gesture of generosity was repackaged as a line on a balance sheet. The old Vegas model of give a little to get a lot was replaced by take as much as you can and keep taking. For the executives caught in the middle, the transformation was painful. Some resisted, but resistance came with a price. Those who stood in the way of the new corporate model were quickly replaced. Adapt or get out, that was the ultimatum. And many, including the retired casino executive interviewed in this story, admit that they signed off on changes they knew would kill the magic. In their words, if I didn't play along, I'd have been replaced by someone who would. What made the shift especially insidious was how the public responded. Every time a new fee or price hike was introduced, there was anger, complaints, even headlines about the death of Vegas. But then guests came anyway. They grumbled while pulling out their credit cards, but they still paid. That behavior sent a dangerous signal back to the boardrooms: the limits could always be pushed further. If the public kept showing up, there was no incentive to stop. The Strip began to change visibly. What was once a playground for the middle class became a maze of charges, restrictions, and high-priced options. Guests no longer felt like royalty. They felt like marks in a game where the house always won, not just on the tables, but in every corner of their stay. A weekend in Vegas turned into a series of transactions, each one designed to bleed a little more from your wallet. The magic wasn't gone all at once, but piece by piece, decision by decision, it was dismantled. By the time the transformation was complete, the Strip had crossed a line it could never return from. Vegas was no longer a city built on giving to the guest. It was a city built on taking, and the old guard knew it. They warned it was unsustainable, that the lifeblood of Vegas, the everyday people, the families, the groups of friends pooling their money for a weekend of fun, would eventually disappear. But Wall Street didn't care. The charts showed growth. The profits rolled in, and as long as the numbers stayed green, the culture shift was considered a success. Behind the neon glow, Vegas had entered a new era. One where loyalty, atmosphere, and magic meant nothing compared to quarterly targets. And as the retired executive confessed, that was the moment he realized the Strip he once loved was never coming back. The Strip once thrived on volume. In the old days, success was measured by heads in beds and the endless buzz of casino floors packed shoulder to shoulder. It didn't matter if half the players were only pulling the nickel slots or lingering at the cheap buffets, the sheer number of people created energy, noise, and momentum. That energy was contagious, and it made everyone spend more. But as Wall Street reshaped the strip, that formula was flipped upside down. Instead of filling every room and every table, the strategy became about fewer guests, but richer ones. The numbers told the story. Why settle for 100 people each spending $200 when you could draw 40 people each spending $600? The math looked irresistible, and soon the corporate philosophy was set. Raise room rates, increase minimum bets at tables, charge more for drinks, and pile on hidden fees. With fewer guests, operations costs dropped while profits stayed the same or even rose. To investors and board members, it was a dream come true. But for the strip itself, it was a slow death. The atmosphere of Vegas was never just about profit margins, it was about the crowd. Tourists from the Midwest, bachelor parties from California, families from Texas, retirees from Florida, and international visitors all packed together created a kind of living heartbeat. When sidewalks were crowded, when casino floors roared with cheers and laughter, the strip felt alive. That was what kept people coming back, not just the chance of winning big, but the electricity of being surrounded by thousands of others chasing the same thrill. When the shift to fewer guests took hold, that heartbeat grew faint. Walking down the strip on a weekday, you could feel the emptiness. The lights still shone, but without the masses, they felt hollow. High rollers became the prized target. Instead of courting the middle-class traveler with cheap buffets and comped rooms, the casinos focused on attracting international whales willing to drop tens of thousands in a single weekend. Exclusive clubs, luxury suites, and private gaming rooms replaced the affordable perks of the past. Conventions and corporate travelers filled in the gaps, bringing steady streams of expense accounts and guaranteed spending. On paper, it worked. Revenue was high even when foot traffic was low. But the strip no longer belonged to everyone. It belonged to the few. The problem, as the retired executive admitted, is that high rollers are fickle. They can be lured to Macau, Singapore, or Monte Carlo at a moment's notice if the deal looks better, if the perks are flashier, or if another destination feels fresher. Meanwhile, the middle class, the true backbone of Vegas for decades, was already walking away. Once priced out, many never returned. They realized they could spend a fraction of the money elsewhere for a better overall experience. And with every family lost, with every group of friends who decided to vacation in Mexico instead of Nevada, Vegas, lost not just customers, but the soul that made it unique. Inside the casinos, the difference was obvious. In the old days, a man could lose $200 at the slots and still walk away smiling because he'd enjoyed free drinks, a cheap steak dinner, maybe even a comped room. He felt valued. In the new Vegas, the same man lost $200 and also had to pay for parking, swallow a $50 buffet, and shell out $25 for a watered-down cocktail. Instead of feeling like fun money, it felt like being ripped off. That bitterness eroded the very trust and excitement that made gambling in Vegas different from anywhere else. The strip became quieter. The buzz of crowds dulled into the polite hush of high-limit rooms. Where once tourists shouted in triumph over small wins, now the floors were filled with silent players, guarded and cautious, staring at screens. The laughter, the chaos, the reckless abandon of the old Vegas nights gone. And with them, the city's identity slipped further away. The retired executive remembered the moment clearly. He looked out over the casino floor one evening and realized that while profits were holding strong, something invisible had died. The energy was gone. Vegas was surviving financially, but spiritually it was running on fumes. What Wall Street celebrated as efficiency was in his eyes nothing more than hollow success. We were killing the goose that laid the golden egg, he admitted. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. What made the decline of old Vegas even more tragic was that it mirrored something larger happening across America, the slow death of the middle class. For decades, Las Vegas had been the ultimate playground for everyday people. A construction worker from Ohio, a teacher from Kansas, or a nurse from Texas could book a cheap flight, grab a bargain room, and for one dazzling weekend, live like they were rich. Vegas was never just a place for the elite. It was a place where the middle class could escape the grind of daily life and taste something extraordinary. But when Wall Street took control of the Strip, that promise was sold off piece by piece. It didn't happen all at once. No one sat in a boardroom and declared war on regular Americans. Instead, it was death by 1,000 cuts. A $25 resort fee here, a $50 buffet there, cocktails that jumped from $10 to $25, parking that went from free to $30 overnight. Each individual decision felt small, justifiable, even harmless. But when stacked together, they created a wall that ordinary families could no longer climb. A weekend trip to Vegas that once cost $500 now costs 2 or 3 times as much. For many, the city that once felt like theirs had slipped out of reach. The retired executive admitted that by the time he realized the scale of the change, it was too late. The middle-class families weren't coming back. They had already found alternatives. Why spend thousands in Vegas when you could get a better deal in Mexico or cruise the Caribbean or simply stay closer to home? The Strip had betrayed them, and once betrayed loyalty doesn't return easily. The executives who thought they were protecting profits had in truth burned the very bridge that made Vegas special. Meanwhile, high rollers became the new obsession. But the problem with high rollers is that they are never loyal. They chase perks, status, and luxury wherever it's offered. Today, they might favor Vegas, but tomorrow, Macau, Singapore, or Monte Carlo could tempt them away. By pivoting toward the wealthy elite, the Strip traded a dependable foundation for an unstable gamble. The middle class had been the lifeblood of Vegas, returning year after year, generation after generation. High rollers were nothing more than passing shadows, and the executives knew it. This wasn't just a Vegas problem, it was a reflection of America's broader reality. Airlines had added endless fees for bags and seats, sports tickets skyrocketed, hotels charged for Wi-Fi and amenities that were once included. The everyday consumer was being squeezed at every angle, and Vegas amplified that squeeze louder than anywhere else. In a way, the Strip became a symbol of the nation's economic shift: profit first, people second. The energy loss was impossible to ignore. Walk the Strip today and you can feel it. Yes, the casinos are polished, the lights still glitter, and the shows remain dazzling. But the hum of excitement, the sound of crowds buzzing with possibility, is gone. Without the middle class filling the sidewalks, without budget travelers and families creating noise and chaos, the Strip feels more like a luxury mall than a playground. Profitable, yes, but soulless. And the irony is brutal. The very people who built Vegas, the working-class tourists who came year after year, the loyal middle-class dreamers who made the city famous, are the ones who have been driven out. In chasing quarterly growth, the Strip has cut off its own roots. The retired executive admitted he saw it happening in real-time. Guests who once smiled through their losses now left angry, feeling gouged. Employees who once thrived on tips from happy visitors now watched their hours shrink as the crowds thinned. A place once defined by generosity had become defined by greed. For him, that realization was crushing. He confessed to feeling complicit, signing off on policies he knew would hollow out the city's core. And while the profits still came, the long-term cost was clear. Vegas had turned its back on the very people who made it great, and in doing so, it lost the soul that made it unlike anywhere else in the world. The Strip was still alive, but the heart of Vegas, the middle-class dream, was already gone. For the retired casino executive, the weight of his decisions never truly left him. Sitting across from the interviewer, he admitted the truth outright. Yes, he was complicit. He had signed off on policies that traded magic for money, community for quarterly reports. He could have fought harder, he could have spoken louder, but he didn't. Because in that world, resistance meant replacement. If I didn't do it, someone else would have, he confessed. And though the excuse might shield him on paper, it didn't shield him from guilt. The Strip had been transformed on his watch, and he carried the burden of knowing he played a role in its decline. He explained why he chose to retire early. It wasn't burnout or boredom, it was disillusionment. Each year the meetings grew more mechanical. Conversations weren't about creating experiences or building loyalty anymore. They were about squeezing margins, cutting costs, and finding new ways to extract dollars from guests. The joy of shaping unforgettable weekends had been replaced by spreadsheets and projections. I didn't want to spend the rest of my career squeezing people dry and pretending it was progress, he said. So he walked away, not to save Vegas, but to save himself. Yet even in his regret, there was a deep love for the city. He spoke about the Strip like a man recalling an old friend, one who had lost their way. He still believed in Vegas's potential, in its unique ability to dazzle and delight, but he no longer believed in the machine that controlled it. Vegas isn't dead, he insisted, but the Vegas I loved is slipping away. For him, stepping aside was a small act of rebellion, a way of saying enough was enough. He couldn't stop the tide, but he could at least refuse to contribute to it any longer. Looking forward, he offered a sobering prediction. The strategy of fewer but richer might work for now, but it was dangerous. High rollers are not permanent. They are mercenaries moving from one luxury destination to another, chasing the best deal. If Macau, Singapore, or Monte Carlo offered a shinier package tomorrow, the whales would vanish from Vegas overnight. And once the middle class is gone, there is no easy way to win them back. He warned that the Strip is walking a razor's edge, balancing short-term profits against long-term ruin. But he also left the door open for hope. He believed that if someone someday had the courage to reverse course, to bring back value, to embrace the middle class, to remember that generosity breeds loyalty, Vegas could rediscover its soul. The city has always been about reinvention, and perhaps that spirit could save it again. Without the regular folks, without the people who made this city alive, Vegas ain't Vegas, he said with conviction. That, in his mind, was the ultimate truth. The interviewer closed with a reflection that echoed the audience's own thoughts. The executive wasn't a villain, but he was part of the machine. His honesty carried weight precisely because he admitted his failures. The story wasn't about one man. It was about a culture, a system that prioritized growth over people, profit over experience. And while Vegas still sparkles on the surface beneath the neon lies, a city at war with itself, a city that has traded magic for money. In the end, the retired executive's words were less a confession and more a warning. A warning that if Vegas continues on this path, the Strip may remain profitable, but hollow, glittering, but soulless. He still loves the city, and like many who once walked its golden streets, he still hopes that one day the magic will return. But for now, his verdict was final. The Vegas he knew, the Vegas that belonged to everyone, is gone. And unless something changes, it may never come back. Las Vegas still shines with its neon lights, but the truth behind that glow is far darker than most visitors realize. The Strip was once built on generosity, a city where the middle class could feel like kings and queens for a weekend. Today, it's become a place designed to extract rather than give, to profit rather than enchant. The confession of a man who spent 14 years in the executive offices only confirms what so many of us have felt walking down those nearly empty sidewalks. Vegas is not the same city anymore. It's no longer the playground of the people, but the playground of the few. And yet, despite everything, there is still hope. Vegas has always been a city of reinvention, a place that can rise from its own mistakes and come back stronger. The question is whether anyone in power will have the courage to bring back that magic for everyday people, or whether the Strip will continue down a path that trades soul for spreadsheets. So what do you think? Is Las Vegas truly gone forever, or can it be saved? Share your story in the comments below, and if you want to hear more hidden truths and shocking confessions from behind the neon curtain, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. Because the story of Vegas is far from over, and the next chapter may be even darker.